All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Here.
Ms. Laird?
Here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here. Nice to have everybody full table full this time. So weddings are over with, so we're good to go now. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting held September 22nd, 2022, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved. Moving on to the legislative report.
I think it's appropriate in lieu of a report. I thought, given the presentation tonight, which is all about legislation, we'd move all the time to these gentlemen.
Yep. Good. Okay. No walk-on items for
That is
tonight.
correct. None tonight.
All right. Moving on to the community aspect. There's no one in here to address the board, so we'll move on to superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. I'd like to start tonight by introducing our guests so they can get on. I understand they have another meeting tonight, but on your screen here, we see William Phyllis and his friend Dennis, who's going to help us with our presentation tonight. This William, I've been to quite a few seminars with Mr. Phyllis in Columbus. He's with the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy for School Funding. If you remember I think it was August, I was going to go to a session in Bowling Green and it got canceled. So we kind of said, well, let's just, get maybe someone here to talk to us. So I reached out to Mr. Phyllis and he's agreed to kind of bring us up to speed on his own organization and what they're trying to do for public schools in Ohio. Mr. Phyllis, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you for a few minutes tonight. We'll try to be brief and we'll condense our 2-hour presentation into a few minutes. First of all, we filed the Ed Choice Voucher lawsuit on January 4 of this year. Since that time, there have been several court proceedings.
Mr. Phyllis, can I hold on? Can I have you hold just a second? We're not hearing you very well. I don't know if there's maybe a microphone you could get closer to. I don't know if there's anything we can do on our end, Andrew, to maybe crank his up volume any. It's a little muffled here in the front.
Okay, how are we coming through now?
That's a little better.
Okay, well, I will do what I can to, if I'm getting too loud, you can just turn me down.
Oh, well, you're doing great.
We filed the challenge to the constitutionality of the Ed Choice Voucher Program on January 4. Since that time, there's been several court proceedings, the most recent of which we filed our brief in opposition to the state's motion to dismiss the case. And by the way, the state always, in cases like this, the state always introduces a motion to dismiss the case. We filed that on July 1. And, we had 6 amicus briefs filed with us in support of our brief, written by 20 different education-related organizations. So we went into this with a lot of support. I want to talk about the governance of the steering committee, the governance of the coalition and Vouchers for Ohio. We have 20-some board members, superintendents, treasurers, other education-related organization personnel on the committee. We have a former Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court. We have an OSU law professor. We have a former legislator who's an attorney. And so we have a real mix of what I consider high-powered people in governing this operation. We have over 200 districts that are currently involved. And of course, what we're trying to accomplish is have 600 districts involved in this litigation for not only litigation purposes, but for public relations purposes. As I said, we have a great steering committee. We have a great law firm, Walter Haverfield, representing us. Mark Wallach, a litigator with 46 years experience in the courtroom, is our chief attorney. So we have the right steering committee. We're going to win this. We're going to cause the Ed Choice vouchers to go away in Ohio. We're going to win this because we have the right steering committee. We have the right law firm. We have the right PR firm, and you're going to hear from Dennis here in just a little bit. Dennis was with the Akron Beacon Journal for several years, was a bureau chief in Columbus for several years. He wrote extensively, beginning in the 1990s, about charter schools, about vouchers, about the school funding, the litigation. And when we look for a PR firm, we sought Dennis out. He didn't come to us asking for work. We sought him out because he was the right person to do this job. We have the right mix of districts. So far, we have rural districts, the urban districts. In fact, we have 6 urban districts: Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, Canton, Dayton, Youngstown, and I think Akron is also considering becoming involved. We have JVSs, education service centers. So we have the right mix of districts. We have the right cause. The right cause here is to preserve the public school system. Now, you need to know that this House Bill 290, that's the universal voucher bill, is still in play. Some people think that it's kind of buried, but it's still in play. And we expect that some of those provisions in House Bill 290, the universal voucher bill, is going to be acted upon this fall in the lame duck session. That's a good time for legislators to slip daylight past the rooster, so to speak, to slip these policies into law. No one is really paying a whole lot of attention. So basically we have the right claims. You have to have the right claims in order to win a lawsuit, obviously. And Dennis is going to take a couple minutes here to talk about those 5 claims that we have in this lawsuit. So Dennis, would you proceed?
Thank you, Bill. And I'm going to go through this very quickly, and then we'll open up the questions. As Bill mentioned, we have 5 issues that we're suing the state over. And this is a lawsuit filed in the Ohio court system, not the U.S. This will not go to the U.S. Supreme Court. This will eventually be decided by the Ohio Supreme Court. It's also a declaratory judgment question, which means that this isn't something, if the court rules with us and says this is unconstitutional, which we believe it is, it won't be sent back to the legislature to fix. This would basically say that you cannot fund vouchers. And that means the program is shut down, and that's what we're seeking to do. The first count is the creation. We believe that this is unconstitutional because it goes against the idea of, in our Ohio Constitution, it says that the legislature shall be responsible for a single system of common schools. This creates a second system of schools. It promotes not one, but multiple systems of education. There's no provision in the Constitution for this. It's also at the expense of adequately funding a thorough and efficient system of common schools. We believe the Ohio Constitution forbids this, and the 2-year state budget that they passed makes things even worse. In that budget, they increased the vouchers for high school students by 25% to $7,500 per pupil. K through 8 students are receiving $5,500. They removed the cap on vouchers. They have created a tuition tax credit They now are giving a tax credit to families to homeschool. Next door in West Virginia, they're giving vouchers to families to homeschool. They're creating education savings accounts of $500 for parents. They're doing a bunch of things to really broaden this. And as Bill mentioned, House Bill 290 is going to make it even worse. The second count is that they have failed to thoroughly fund the school funding formula. Now, they created something called the Cup-Patterson formula, which they believe is constitutional. And most of the people at the table agree. The problem is they only phased it in at 1/3 of the money. So that means that $2 out of $3 that should be going to fund the schools at a constitutional level, the public schools at a constitutional level, that's not happening. And at the same time, they're taking money and giving it to private schools through the Ed Choice program. That's unconstitutional. Now, please keep in mind that there's a single budget line item for public schools and the Ed Choice private schools. It's the same budget line item. So $1 out for private schools is $1 less for public schools. And so when they're underfunding public schools, they cannot be taking money out of that pool of money for public schools, giving it to private schools at a time when they're underfunding public schools. That's unconstitutional. The constitutional framers were very clear on this, and you'll see that later in some of the language. As I mentioned, the Ed Choice is funded from the same budget line item as public schools. All growth in the past 5 years in the budget has gone to voucher programs, including Ed Choice. There's zero funding public schools. That's unfortunate. Count 3 is, and this is really an egregious situation. Ed Choice makes segregation in Ohio even worse than it is. The framers rejected this idea. And let me give you just one example. Richmond Heights in Cuyahoga County, outside of Cleveland, prior to Ed Choice being introduced into the district, 1 in 4 students in that district were white. Post Ed Choice, that's down to 3% white. You have basically in-district white flight going on there. That's unconstitutional. The fact is that private schools can apply litmus tests, and they do apply litmus tests to their students. They can look at disability, disciplinary records, academics, athletics, race, religion, financial status. Even though $7,500, I'm sure you would gladly take $7,500 from the state for every high school student you have. That's not enough for a lot of these private schools. So when they say, they're giving choice to the parents and the students, that's just not true. The choice is really in the hands of the private school operators. They get to decide who they let through their doors and who they bar from their doors. And they can open their doors a crack, close them completely. But you know who can't do this? Public schools. Public schools are open to everyone. Your doors are wide open. Anyone who walks into your district, you give them a desk. That's count 3. Count 4, look at this. This is the constitutional language. No religious or other sect shall ever have any exclusive right to or control of any part of the school funds of this state. It's there in black and white. They can't do this. So we believe that these 4 counts are really going to help us make have the system ruled unconstitutional. Look at this. 90% of private schools in Ohio are parochial. Last year, $250 million went to sectarian schools. Let's take a look at what happened in Cleveland Heights, University Heights. In the last 3 years, they've lost $27 million to Ed Choice. As I mentioned before, Ed Choice students in high school in that district, they're getting $7,500. Cleveland Heights, University Heights gets $1,100 from the state per pupil for high school students.
Hey, Dennis,
Yes.
if I may, I don't think our screen is advancing that we're seeing unless I'm not doing something properly. We're still seeing the first slide.
You're still seeing the first slide. Oh,
Yes, sir.
shoot. Yeah, I've been going through slides. I wonder why that's happening. Well, then I'm just going to quit sharing and we'll just talk real quick.
Okay.
Hold on.
Oh, wait,
Oh.
there we go.
There we go.
Now we're moving.
See that now?
Yes, sir. 90% of private schools.
Okay, good. And can you see below that Cleveland Heights, University Heights lost 27 million?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what you're seeing there is this district has lost $27 million. 95% of the Ed Choice students never enrolled in Cleveland Heights or University Heights. And it took 2 levies by the district to make up the difference. Now, what that means is as they're losing dollars to these private schools, they've got to go back to homeowners and others and property owners in the district and ask them for more money. That increases the reliance on local property taxes to pay for schools. In every DeRolf decision, the original one and then the subsequent decisions, they said that one of the reasons the system was unconstitutional, there was an over-reliance on local property taxes. Ed Choice increases the over-reliance on property taxes. That's unconstitutional. And the 5th account is basically our declaratory judgment. We are saying this violates the Ohio Constitution, and if you rule in our favor, they've got to stop funding Ed Choice. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you have. And you know, I know that we, as Bill mentioned, we are really trying to get districts to sign up. We are going to be going into the courts is going to start holding hearings on this lawsuit. And we think that the more districts we have on board with us, not only helps us pay for the legal fees that are involved in this, but also helps us from a public relations standpoint, because it shows that we're unified in our plans, our efforts against private school vouchers.
Dennis, I want to emphasize one point, and that is the Constitution, Article 6, Section 2 is very clear. It says the General Assembly shall secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. That's very clear language. The General Assembly shall secure by taxation or otherwise a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. There's no provision for support of private education. In fact, there's no provision for supporting charters as well. We know we have no problem with private schools. In fact, I've been on a private school board before, but that's a private venture that needs to be funded by private individuals. So, but would be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Dennis, if I may, could you clarify what that fee structure is for our for potentially joining?
Yes, it's $2 per pupil. It's on an annual basis. A Board of Education passed the resolution, and that resolution only binds them for 1 year. So, you know, if they're not happy with the situation after a year, they don't re-up.
And John, I sent you an email right before this started. It has a bunch of links in it, including a link to a sample resolution and also our fee structure. There's also in there links to our Facebook page, our website, just a lot of really good information in there for if you want to share that. Anybody who clicks on any of those links can see more information about our effort.
Super, thank you.
Gentlemen, I have a question for you. We actually addressed this with our representative, our state representative some time ago, and we brought up the question about no religious or other sect receiving tax dollars for the purpose of education. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, on this, but I believe he said that particular argument had already been addressed in the court system, and vouchers were approved in spite of it. So are you familiar with that? What exactly was the opinion of the court, and specifically why did they allow it? And then my second question is, how are you positioning it differently as to get a different outcome?
Well, he was probably referring, or he or she was probably referring to the Zellman case, and that was a federal case. This is in state court, and the particular section, Article 6, Section 2, the second part of the second clause in Article 6, Section 2, you know, that's the state constitution, and the Zellman case had nothing to do with, you know, the Ohio Constitution. Had everything to do with the federal constitution.
Also, the Zellman case is basically the Cleveland voucher program, which was started as a pilot project. And if you read the decision made by the U.S. Supreme Court on that, they basically said this is constitutional because it's limited in scope. It is a test program. Right now, it did not address a broad, wide-scale program as you're seeing underway in Ohio, nor did it address what we're going to see with House Bill 290 when every child and every student is voucher eligible. So when the second part of your question, ma'am, is we're clearly in Ohio courts asking the court to apply the Ohio constitutional language to this program, and we believe it's unconstitutional.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, I have to say, I heard you speak one time. It was actually a committee hearing on school funding. It was then Representative Reinecke had me down when I first became a school board member, and he said, "Hey, do you want to go into a Senate or a House hearing committee meeting?" And you were one of the testimonies there that day, and you spelled it out so very clear and so very simple. And it seems like Columbus seems to convolute everything that we try to do and make it worse. To me, you spelled it out so plain English why it's so unconstitutional, and it has been proven that for many years now. Why has Columbus not done anything about it?
Well, there's if you look at the district, the House and Senate district boundaries, those boundaries have a lot to do with the inaction of the state legislature. Dennis is tell them about when you were a reporter about what.
Yeah, when I was a reporter, there was I'd be talking to lawmakers and they'd be passing something, and I would say to them sometimes as a reporter, I would say, "Isn't this unconstitutional?" And they would laugh and say, "Well, what's a little constitution among friends?" And so this is why we're in the courts, because if we felt we could go to the legislature and stop this snowball from rolling downhill rapidly and getting larger and larger, we would. But the fact is Matt Huffman, the Senate president, has, said that he is very supportive, that it's actually his calling to, help private schools and parochial schools grow. He's very committed to this. We don't think that the legislature is going to back down, so we have to go to the courts because that's where we think our best opportunity to fight this is.
Well, the way the legislative districts are constituted, the Democrats are going to get one set of districts. They're going to win in one set of legislative districts, and the Republicans are going to win in those. So regardless of what they do, whether it's constitutional or not, in most cases, they're going to be reelected. So there's no real competition in the legislature, and basically when the legislature does not put forward a constitutional system for public education and scatters the money out to the four winds and throws it into charters and vouchers, they're in total violation of Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution. It's that simple. We're just asking the court to read the constitutional provision. That's what we're asking. Just read the plain language of the constitutional provision. And when one does that, there's no room for vouchers, there's no room for charters. There's no room for any other alternative to the public common school system. The public common school system was set up for the public good. It was set up to provide citizenship training to all the children of all the people. And unfortunately, when if this voucher thing takes over, let's say, we're going to really separate the rich from the poor, because Here's a private school that charges $15,000 per pupil for high school, and the state gives them $7,500. How is a poor person going to raise the other $7,500 to have that child in the high school of the private school? So the legislators really just need to read the Constitution, and all we're asking is that the court read the Constitution.
I have another question for you. We've talked about the potential disparate treatment of students from one district to another when they're not held to the same levels of accountability. It seems odd that we would contribute equal tax dollars to various structures of education and not expect the same results of each school academically. We talked about that before. Has that been discussed in your committee, and has it come up part of your argument?
Yeah, and when we're having the argument in court about this issue, that's going to be a part of the argument.
One of their arguments, they're going to come in and say that, the money should follow the student and the parent. We're going to blow that apart by saying, look, again, the Constitution says a single system of common schools for all school children, but also common schools for the community. We don't have pool choice where if you want to build a swimming pool in your backyard because you don't want to swim at the public pool, then you can go to your local government and say, would you reimburse me for the cost of building my private swimming pool? 75% of the families in the voucher program right now were never in public schools. They're seeking a refund and a rebate. So going to your point about academics and accountability, two things. One is there have been studies that have shown that public school students outperform their private school peers, even though they try to say this is a way to save children from low performing or poor performing schools. That's just not true. The public schools students perform better than their private school peers. And secondly, the House Bill 290 bill that Bill mentioned, the proposal, that would actually move accountability for the private school system to the state treasurer's office. So they want to take away oversight from the Ohio Department of Education, the State Board of Education, and put this private school program under a new bureaucracy. So there's not going to be any accountability. And so again, this is all part of our argument. We're going to go into the court and lay all of this out to show not only that it's unconstitutional, but that it's also very faulty. The legislature will not have these conversations. They will vote on this legislation without debating these merits because they're just going to bully it through and onto the law books.
I want to make sure that I understood that. Are you saying that the measurement of academic success and accountability of the performance of a district that's a private school isn't going to be under the educators of the Ohio Department of Education? It's going to be moved to the financiers, which, no offense, I'm in finance, I'm a banker, but it's going to be moved to the treasurer of state?
Yes. Yeah, it's right in House Bill 290.
From measuring successful education by educators,
right,
to this one segment of the education population being measured instead by those with finance background.
That's right. And really what it really is a way to take the educators and the professionals out of the equation. Like there's a reason we have a Department of Education. There's a reason we have a State Board of Education. Those are all part of the oversight apparatus of ensuring that our districts are providing educational opportunities to our children. They're going to remove that oversight from those two agencies.
And remember that private schools are not accountable to the public. Private schools don't have report cards as public schools have. Private schools are not audited by the state auditor, even though they receive some direct payments from the state and vouchers. The auditors don't. The state auditor's office doesn't check the private schools accounting. So there's really no public accountability for the private program. And again, I'm not opposed to private education. I say it's a great mission for people that want to have it. But it's like Dennis says that Eleanor Roosevelt said that she was in favor of private schools, but was in favor of the people paying for it, the private schools, rather than the public. Spending public money without public accountability, there's just something blatantly wrong with that. Now, every dime that your treasurer spends, he or she's accountable for it. No dollars through vouchers or direct payments to private schools is held accountable to the general public or to anyone.
My last question for you is loosely related. It's in regards to the accessibility of information to students from one structure of education to another, particularly parochial schools where religion and religious curriculum is available and however much they want it to be plentiful and in whatever topic available, which for those that value that is a very good thing. It feels very restricted on the public education side, though. So, not only do we not have the same levels of accountability for results, but it seems we don't have the same access to information for our children. So we're going to distribute tax dollars equally and not supply the same level of access and not apply the same boundaries and expectations, which seems very opposite of usually how deployed tax dollars are measured. Am I close?
I think you've summed up our presentation.
Yeah, you have to come with us at our next presentation and help us. You're making great points.
The people that put that language in the Constitution, 1850-51, the thorough and efficient language, what they were envisioning is young people coming together, learning together, playing together, understanding each other to become citizens, as a program for all the children of all the people to learn together and become citizens together. They were envisioning citizenship as the outcome of schooling, and citizenship has to do with the unity. And if there's ever a time in the history of this nation where we need to come together and to whether it be in the education system or any other institution, it's now. Children will learn to get along if the adults will get out of the way.
Yeah, and I think to Bill's point, this is why we're emphasizing our first count, which is a single system of common schools, for the common good of everyone. And when you start having, and this will lead to larger and larger numbers of students being peeled away from the common school system into a separate, and we believe unequal system of schools that is not teaching a common curriculum. So it's very problematic. And I don't think the people who are pushing this, you have some people who are ideologues, you have some people who are anti-public school, whatever reasons it is, I don't think they're thinking long-term the negative impact this has on our state and our society. We personally believe in this single system of common schools with doors wide open to all students.
It's a thrill for me to view the Board of Education there in your city, representing the children, representing the taxpayers, representing the community. And that's the way it ought to be. When you're using tax money, you represent the community. And it's just a thrill for me to see that you assembled there to take care of the people's business of education.
Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your enlightening presentation. Any last words, or can we cut you off?
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate this opportunity. And great questions, by the way. Thank you so much.
I've got a sharp bunch here, that's for sure. All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
you for your
Have a good
time.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry for all the extra questions there, guys,
Oh.
but it's important. I want to make sure
Absolutely.
I know what I think I know before I take a position.
Pretty enlightening.
Yeah. I put at your place just a copy of that resolution. I don't know what the board's wishes are. I would recommend we sort of wait, but I'll do whatever you guys want to do. Maybe if you have constituents you want to talk to, but I will do the board's bidding if you want to try to move on this, or wait and see, you want to talk about some more, whatever you'd like to do.
John, how are you presenting it? Because if you present this officially and we table it, I think the clock starts ticking.
Gotcha.
I
No.
think we have to take action within a time period.
No, maybe I should be very careful how I say that. I just put that out there. It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
It's just for you, basically for your reference to study the language. So my intent would be that you look at it, read it, think about it, talk to your.
Was this a
constituents.
resolution that they supplied?
That's exactly what Mr. Phillips was referring to that he
Okay.
sent me
Okay.
earlier.
So
Yeah.
it's
I had a copy
information
before.
for us to see what it would look like if
Absolutely.
we
And I
decided
will
to
forward
put it on
everything
the
else that he
agenda.
also sent to me for you to have as well.
Okay.
Do we have access to the PowerPoint that
Let me
Does he
check on
have-
that, Ms. Lewis. I think so.
would be?
Well, we would certainly have the recorded board meeting, but you're talking about the actual slide presentation.
Yes.
Okay, let me see what I can find out for that. I would certainly think so.
I know I'm the new kid on the block, but I certainly have a lot of homework to do.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
to just be more
Absolutely.
educated.
It's a big issue.
But that was very, very helpful to hear that position.
Absolutely.
Megan, if it comes to pass that this resolution is put on an agenda for official action, would you also have an appropriation specifying the specific cost for this year?
I don't know that I'd have to have an extra appropriation.
If
I'd
we
have
got to
to-
pay for something, and I'm sure it's over the limit of what you can do by yourself.
Well, no, I just mean like we would have, there might be money in a line that we would take that from that's already been appropriated.
Let's see.
Do you,
Okay.
does that
I
make
did the math.
sense?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I did the math today. I looked at ODE and I actually checked with them when I was talking to them earlier. It's the actual number right on our report card. If you click on our report card on the Ohio Department of Ed, it lists us for this year's ODE number, 3313 is the number of students. So times 2 is $6,626.
I guess I was thinking if this becomes a public document, the public sees what action we're taking. I think it should also see the cost. It
Right.
would if we were going to enter a contract.
Oh, yeah.
It would show the
Yep.
cost.
It's appropriate, for sure.
Because we could probably even put on the resolution like not to exceed X amount of dollars or whatever, like we've done in the past with other contracts and things.
Just one thing, if I may, I think I may have shared this with the board a couple of years ago, and this is an old number, but when he mentioned the segregation, that one really strikes me because when I first came on board here, there was 85% of the students that open enroll out of Fremont City schools are white students, whereas they only represent about 53% of our student body. So it is a disproportionate number of white students that open enroll out. Now that is through a process that's, driven by law and has been very common for a long time. But I think something like this would drive that even more, to his point. So I just wanted to throw that out for consideration.
Yeah, I think no matter what side you fall on this, if you look at it and not think of it as a financial thing, you're fooling yourself because you have to follow the money. I mean, if they're starting to put the person in charge as the treasurer of the state of Ohio instead of ODE, that doesn't quite make sense.
And only for one segment. Everyone else is
Right.
gonna
Everybody
report
else
to
is
ODE.
right.
But this one,
Goes
we're not going to apply the same boundaries and expectations.
right. I mean, it's the same thing. Make it a level playing field. And then let's see how it plays out. But
Right
make it a level playing field. Everything else has to be equal. There's no inequality. And if this doesn't scream inequality,
Yeah.
I don't know what does.
Can compete as long as it's an even field. Yeah.
Tell me the rules so it's the same rules for everybody.
Yeah.
Not just some.
Okay. Thank you, board. Anything else on that? All right. I just got a couple more items just to kind of bring up to speed. We have a policy meeting Wednesday. We had a very productive meeting with the directors, and I had actually our president and vice president at the meeting talk about their food policy and kind of our makeup and some of the things that are happening there. So we're looking at ways to tweak that, taking some of our ideas that we kind of generated that day to talk about adjusting that and making sure that it is appropriate. Also, more information about that to come next meeting. So just want to give everybody an update on that. I know that's been a hot topic for everyone. We're getting everybody safety trained. There's new legislation, speaking of legislation, that every building have a safety assessment team. And the future is that through this whole year, we all get trained, and then each building has a group of people, typically an administrator or SRO, maybe a couple of teachers, that would be trained and then set up to assess a threat. So let's say we hear a rumor, we hear maybe a child's having some trouble, has made some threats. All that information would go to this threat assessment team who's been trained in order to, okay, is this valid? What's our steps? What do we do? So I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's a good thing. A lot of training going to be coming up. Mr. Anway and I are attending one next week, and then we'll start assembling our building level teams from there. So just a heads up on that.
One quick question.
Yes, sir.
So do private schools have threat assessment teams?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Just ask.
We also are firing up our calendar committee. I know it's a little seems a little early, but our contract does say that in October we'll start discussing our new calendar. And something to just get on your radar is the eclipse. Have you heard about the eclipse that's coming through this part of Ohio? Folks, this is big, and I hope I don't oversell it, but everything I hear, I even have the Emergency Management Association here in the county contacting me about seminars to get prepared for the eclipse. In April of 2023, 24. So a year and 4 months out. If you just search eclipse on any device, we are in the epicenter for the United States. Actually, McCutcheonville, I believe, is the center. They believe McCutcheonville may have 100,000 people descend on that town.
Oh, can it hold 100,000 people?
From all over the world.
No, it's like going through Hessville.
They talked about there'll be people with campers in cornfields, and it will be a thing. So we wanted to try to address that through our calendar. The challenging part for us right now is the eclipse is scheduled through this part of the state at like 3:00 in the afternoon. A very difficult time for us to manage. We'll be on buses. We'll be on that. So it falls close to Easter. So we may actually consider not having school to just avoid the traffic and the issues and everything, and also to give our families a chance to actually observe the eclipse and not be stuck on a school bus. We really want to make this an educational moment, and we're a little worried how that's going to work if that's the timeline for our eclipse. So more to come, but I do encourage you to go home, look up eclipse in Ohio, Northwest Ohio. It's big. It really is big.
That's crazy.
And then for next meeting, we'll have the company here, LifeWise. They're the group that came with Lieutenant Governor Husted probably 2 months ago now, late summer, and met with some of the educators in the county and also some of our pastors, and talked about the access for students to maybe leave campus and get religious education with solely parent permission. So they're going to come and kind of present to us and talk about how that's worked in other districts and what the future might be here for that. So just want to give you a heads up. That's our 24th meeting. Okay. All right. That's all I have. Any questions for me on anything before I roll?
I don't think
Thank
so.
you so much.
Moving on to recommendations.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Price. Item one, always a nice list for our donations. You'll see a few extras here even, and some significant ones, especially covering some of our student charges. This is a very tough subject, I know, but we had almost $5,000 worth of charges within the first 3 weeks of school. So, and we knew this was coming. We've had, 2 years of K-12, nobody pays for lunch. So it's a tough transition for everyone. We are trying to do the best we can to balance, as I think Chantel said, that responsibility to be fiscally responsible, but also the challenge to feed kids and the moral responsibility of that. It's a tough thing. But anyway, I do want to point out that we have several here that stepped up and help us cover. And we actually have a little bit of a balance yet remaining, so we can cover you in a few more going forward. So we need a motion for that.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 1, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 2, it's Red Ribbon Week. And if there's ever been a time in our country where we need to sort of make sure kids understand the consequences of substance abuse, it's now. So with your permission, we will approve this resolution and proceed.
Can I get a motion to approve item 2, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Espiritu. Could I have a second?
So moved.
Second by Ms. Laird. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Moving on to personnel, we have two resignations. Item 3, Linda Burdine and Amber Mitchell. Item 4, we've got a few more certified staff substitutes first. Lindsay Brubaker, Tatina Furness, Brittany Royster, and Carrie Shaw. Then item B, we have appointments, brand new, good news, bus drivers. I would like to make note, the September 13th date there on item 4, I apologize, was a carryover from last agenda. We're going to update that to show today's date with your permission. Tomorrow's date, October 11th. So instead of September 13th, I'd like to change that and strike that to be October 11th. Okay, just a note. Then on the bottom of the page there, support staff substitutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, please. Item 5, this is extended days for our counselor at middle school, Valerie Widmer. We missed her on the list last time. Item 6, these are supplemental contracts. You can see winter is upon us. Basketball is firing up. A couple music programs, just the things that our kids love to do. Item 7, supplemental duty positions. This is for our non-teaching personnel. Same kind of list, but those would be all the staff members that are not teachers. We approved those separately. Item 8, special event workers for said activities. We do have to pay people to come and take tickets and make popcorn and scan tickets and so forth. So that's that list. That continues on to page 8. Then there's a separate list for the same kind of thing for Fremont Middle School. Item 9, special event worker, Jaden Withrow as a student. That's why we kind of lifted him separately as a lifeguard. Item 10, Kristen Roth and Katie Gerber. These are our student teacher mentors. That's kind of an evolving things as our student teachers get signed up from the area universities. We assign them as they come. Item 11, status change for Patricia Husky as a mentor. Next page is status change for Doug Cheek, who's actually going from bus driver to Fremont Middle School kitchen. And then the third one there is Jennifer Smith, student monitor position change in her salary. So that ends our personnel.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve items 3 through 11, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. All right, moving on to report of the treasurer.
As you can see, I don't have any recommendations for tonight. We got the month of September all closed up, and we're moving on into October, rolling in the office. So, having a great time.
All right. No recommendations there. So moving on to board member communications and information. Lori.
Well, thank you to Mr. Phyllis and Mr. Willard for their presentation. It's a lot to look at and think about and consider and see how things are, what's going to happen with students and things that are going on. And thank you to all the donations especially the ones for the meals. Can always use those. Always use anything. I think that's about it.
Anybody else?
I also like to thank the two gentlemen for the presentation. It was very helpful and informative. And also like to thank the community for the donations, exactly what Lori said, especially for the meals. I know that's very helpful for a lot of the families, and as things have changed and not having the free meals as before.
Chantel?
Also, thank you for the donations for the meals and the good discussion that it prompted to come up with a solution to a difficult situation. I really appreciate that. Also appreciate the presentation. I think they spelled it out so that any of our residents that watch this later can understand what's happening. And I just want to clarify something. There's been a lot of discussion between public and parochial schools, and this district in no way feels adversarial towards any other school district, parochial, charter, or otherwise. I think, unfortunately, in fact, my children in grade school went to a parochial school and came to the public school, middle school on, so that they had the blend, to prepare them for life. And I appreciate very much what they learned in their parochial school. It was a good foundation. What happens in legislation like this is communities that weren't divided become divided. When you start giving equal resource without equal access for children, without equal accountability and equal measurement, you create division. So while I think this is advertised as a method of creating equality, I'm afraid that in practice, it may do the opposite. So,
Sarah?
Again, like everyone else, thank you for the presentation. Like I said earlier, I have a lot of homework to do to learn both sides of the issue here to make good decisions. Our thoughts and prayers to those families in Toledo that were affected by the tragedy at the football game. And I hope we're always taking measures to, protect our children, which I feel like we do. But in lighter news, it looked like all the kids had a nice time at homecoming. It's nice to see all the pictures on Facebook and other social media of the kids doing what high school kids should do, having a good time and enjoying each other and the whole pomp and circumstance that goes with homecoming. So we'll just continue to be giant, be present, and be great.
I'll reiterate. Thank you for the gentleman for the presentation. Obviously, the more information you get on a subject, the better decision you can make about that. So, also thank you to the community for the donations. We have a great community of people. That's all there is to it. It's plain and simple. Good luck to all the sports teams as the week or the seasons are winding down, and fall is going to be, or winter sports are going to be starting up here pretty quick. So, just a quick word. School lunches have been this issue for a little bit now, and I can't go past it. I got to take issue with it a little bit when you start seeing the rants on social media. It drove me a little crazy, and I'm not a social media person whatsoever. And to those of you that are out there complaining about it, stop it. I'm going to call you out on it right now. I'm going to call you out and say no, because it wasn't that long ago that this district, we watched hundreds of staff get together during COVID. And as soon as the governor shut down schools, the very first thing they all got together to do was figure out how we were going to educate our kids. How were we going to get their schoolwork to them? How were we going to get internet access to them? And we did it. Then the next question was, how are we going to feed them? Because we know very well that sometimes this is the only food they get throughout the day. They don't get it at home. They get it at school. What do? We set up a gigantic drive-through out here with a semi truck that you couldn't miss for 3 blocks. And people could drive up and get food for their kids. We had staff members taking food to kids' home. For those of you that are out there complaining and saying that our district doesn't care about feeding our kids, just stop, because it's not true. It can't be. This district, the very thing that they think about is the well-being of our kids. We all know that this is the safest place for some of those kids in our community. We have 3,600 students roughly in our district. 65% of them projected to qualify for free and reduced lunches. We're probably at around, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe at most 40% have actually filled out the electronic forms to do this. Families, if you're having trouble accessing this, call the school district, get a hold of somebody. It's a very easy thing, and get it. It's to feed your kids. It's to help feed your kids. We're not talking about some other program. It's about food for your kids, and we want to give it to you. All you have to do is help out a little. And for anybody that says they didn't know it was coming, I'm a parent of an 8th grader. I have known about this since last spring in emails, in text messages, in phone calls. Do not say that the district did not get in touch with you. If you don't have proper information with the school district, they can't get in touch with you. But this has been rolled out for a very long time. And I'm just tired of seeing people bash this. You know what? Stop bashing it. Be a part of the solution. We've got roughly 2,300 students in our district that would qualify for free and reduced lunches. Not all of them are on for that program. I bet somebody is within earshot of you. So if you get off your phone and off of Facebook for a minute, go help them fill out the form. You can help a kid get food at lunch then, and help a family not try to figure out how they're going to pay for that food. My gosh, it is just ridiculous. We're talking about feeding kids. You know what? If you can't do it, I'll come out with an iPad. We can fill it out at your house. Call me at the cookie lady. I don't care. Whatever it takes to get these kids fed, we'll do it. It just, it drives me nuts sometimes. So anyway, I'll stop. But, so anyway, so back to the donations. Thank you very much for the donations for those people that saw that it was very important to do this and not take the time to complain on social media about it. And they just, you know what? Hey, let's fix the problem instead of just complaining. So thank you very much. If there isn't anything else, can I ask for a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion approved. Meeting's adjourned.